Hey, it's Dan from Music Explorer. We're here today with Militia Vox. She's a multi-talented recording artist, a producer, actress, director, and writer. She's also the lead singer of the highly praised all-girl tribute band Judas Priestess. And earlier this year, the band Bad Penny, a band that features guest vocalists, asked Militia to sing a duet with Rob Halford, a career highlight for sure.
So Militia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Pretty good. So I got to say, you've got a very broad career, not only music, but you're a speaker, you're a producer. You started playing piano at 8. How did that come about, and where did you go from there?
I started playing piano because one of my best friends and the girl who lived down the street started playing piano, and I was like, I can do this. I was excited by it. I honestly didn't grow up around any musicians or anyone that played instruments or anything like that. So that was my first encounter with someone who was making music. And I knew I wanted to do that. I just didn't know how. So I was like, oh, well, that's something I can relate to. You know, some of my favorite musicians that I've watched over the years, like Freddie Mercury, the Beatles, they played piano.
Right.
So, if I could figure out how to play piano, then maybe I could make a fraction of music like how they make, you know? But because of the private lessons that I had, I ended up falling into this very competitive child pianist role that I happened to excel at. But, you know, it ended up turning into me being competitive. So I ended up competing in state and regional competitions and winning.
Wow.
Throughout the years, all through my teen years, I was an award-winning competitive pianist. The only thing that was missing from that was I still didn't know how to write music. So it wasn't until I wrote my first song at 16 in the shower, where a lot of good ideas happened to come. I think they say it's because your mind is in a fugue state.
So then you learned how to play bass as well?
Yeah, I picked up bass because it was out of sheer frustration for not having a piano in my small New York apartment. My boyfriend that I was seeing at the time had a bass that he wasn't using, and I was like, can I borrow that? I just figured out how to play that. And I started playing and singing in some of the local bands in New York City. But the thing is, when you're the girl bass player, everybody wants you in their band. Everybody wants you. And I was like, this is fun and all, but I think my rightful place is in the center there. So
how did that come about?
Yeah, that came about from, my first band was in college, and I was in a band called Disciples of Astaroth in 1999, 2 singers, and we were an industrial band, kind of like My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult type sounding, and actually we were really successful in Boston. We had a great crowd, we had a great audience that would come see us. But there were no other industrial bands in Boston at the time. We were the only one.
And what year was that?
That was in 99.
Oh, okay.
And we were just we didn't have anyone to play with. So it was if we were playing, we usually had drag queens open for us and performance artists and things like that because there was just nobody. And we ended up we had a brief stint on Cleopatra Records, just the gothy industrial label. But when we got out of college, we split because half the band went to San Francisco and the other half went to New York. So it just kind of dissipated. But so when I got here, I was well, I want to expand. I'm always just kind of pushing myself into weird territories that I find interesting. So for the sheer fun of it, I just wanted to see if I could play these different instruments and be good at it.
Just believe in yourself.
Yeah, and I just, just kept always pushing the bounds of what I thought I could do. So when I got to New York, there was this club called Don Hill's. So they had a night called Bitch, and it was a ladies' tribute to metal. There would be 20 to 30 girls that would get up and sing with a house rock band, and it would be different songs every month. And so someone had said to me, oh, if you want to sing, you should do Bitch Night. And I was like, that sounds great, whatever that is. So I got up and sang Selling Jesus by Skunk Anansie in 2001?
Was that your first time you tried singing in front of an audience?
By myself in a rock band setting, yes.
Were you intimidated?
No. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I mean, I was nervous about it, but I was excited but I knew that it was right.
I guess that was the real start of it for you then.
Yeah, it was. Just doing that night was very liberating because you got to meet like all these different females from all over the place that came there to like really show what they could do. You know, there's a film about it called The Bitch Movie that it premiered at Wacken a couple years ago. So there's a documentary about this whole experience. That experience alone like forged so many like long-lasting musical relationships in my career.
What was your next goal?
Well, I really just wanted to make original music. And then I was always kind of like doing bands and also doing theater. And then I had gotten poached to be in Sandra Bernhard's band. That's how like the backup singing thing started. It was just a very random unfolding, or not random at all, depending on how you look at life. But
you were evolving.
Yeah, so like once I got the Sandra gig, it was just like once people know you're willing to sing backup for someone, I swear your name goes in a hat. You know, it's like, and people just pass around the hat like, oh, who's willing to sing backup? Let's check the hat. Ooh. So that's how I got the gig with Cyndi Lauper. That's how I ended up singing backup for Nancy Sinatra. That's how I ended up singing backup for Anna Gasteyer. That's how or singing duets with her, actually. I was pretty much living a double life at that point where I was doing these kind of gigs, but then I was also doing like my heavy metal superhero life as Militia. And then when I started getting recognized as Militia on those other gigs, I was like, okay, a choice has to be made. So I actually am Militia just like as like a one name moniker. But interestingly enough, when I was on tour with Dee Snider, we were doing Van Helsing's Curse. And I was talking to this guy and he was like, oh, what's your name? And I was like, Militia. And he's like, Militia, wow, that's really cool. I love that name. He's like, my name is Alex. I was like, cool. Nice to meet you. And then I'm not even kidding, like I think it was like 4 or 5 years later, this dude was on American Gladiators calling himself Militia.
Wow.
And I was livid and I was like, he stole my name. I was so mad. And then he ended up getting fired from American Gladiators because he was in porn. So there was a period of time when you Googled Militia, I would come up and then this guy came up. And I was just like, oh, no. This is not happening.
You started out, you decided to get your own solo career going in 2015?
Yeah. I had my band Swear on Your Life. It ended up leading us to Burnout, but I still play some of the songs in my set when I feel like it now because like the songs are fun and people seem to like them. But when we first came out, like our album was called Burn My Crosses and it got banned like several places like the first week that it came out because of the title. So it didn't even cross our minds that it could potentially be banned.
Right.
Dee Snider said that was a badge of honor, so we just decided to go with that. So when I went solo, it was basically because like Swear on Your Life was like my first like real organic band experience where we were really in it like for the love of music and we were really in it to make a difference and have some impact and write interesting songs. And then when it was starting to dissolve because of various reasons, like I was just like, well, wait a minute, I can write songs by myself. I think that just felt natural to go into a solo territory so I could like write things without having to run it by anyone or release things without, anyone else's approval. Like only I can tell when it's done, which is like liberating, but also expensive.
Yeah, right.
But you know what? Like it's been so gratifying. It's really been so gratifying. But it was fun to, that's why I released that Bait EP first, just to get their palates wet for what I was about to do, because I was changing my sound so much. And plus, like Priestess, it was already in existence, so most people just assumed I was going to do a project that was like a classic metal sounding project.
Well, how did Judas Priestess come about?
Judas Priestess came about through a Craigslist ad.